a very, very difficult question, and I'm sure Alex, who has been sitting with many other families and friends of Canadian detained abroad, knows that there is unfortunately no magical recipe, and unfortunately whatever the government has presented recently as this sort of a declaration against arbitrary detention, it is a step probably in the right direction, but I don't want to be dismissive by saying that maybe it is too little and too late, because when it comes to Canadian detained abroad, and we mentioned, of course, the case of Huseyin Celil and other, I mean, there are still many other Canadian detained abroad. Of course, some of them are detained on criminal offenses, but others are on purely political reasons. And I think there must be some sort of a distinction between both, because that doesn't mean that those who are under drug or other criminal offenses do not deserve to be advocated on behalf of them, or but I think I want to make it clear here that we are talking mainly about the ones who have been arrested for political reasons. And I think Canada has really, speaking, Alex mentioned at the very end of his first intervention about the consistency. I think it's a key word here. There has been a total inconsistency by the Canadian government in dealing with Canadian detained abroad for political reasons here I'm talking about. So most of the time it depends on the goodwill, on whims of the country where the citizens are arrested, and it depends greatly on the effort by the family of the detained person to publicly pressure the Canadian government in taking strong action. So if a family have really of the person detained has good public campaign, can have mount really a good pressure, and is sophisticated enough to have to go and meet with politicians and give interviews and to journalists and keep the case alive in the public opinion, then there is most likely chance that there will be some action. However, if there is not such a campaign, no public really pressure, then most of the time the case will be unfortunately forgotten about. So I think this idea of leaving it up to family and not having a clear, consistent, very well thought policy, I think this is going to leave Canada and unfortunately Canadian detained abroad on their own, and Canada really not being under any sort of accountability when it comes to voters and when it comes to assessing its involvement with some cases. There were many attempts by civil society groups to create and push for the creation of a consistent policy adopted by the government in dealing with the Canadian detained abroad, but those attempts never led to one strong policy. And of course, the closest we came to is this declaration, but according to me, it's not enough. And keep relying on soft or quiet diplomacy, obviously, give, in a way, a free pass to the government, because if it works, then basically the government would say, see, our effort, our quiet diplomacy worked. If it doesn't work, they will keep saying that we are working, but nothing came out of this. So I have here some few recommendations to like what can we get, what can we do, what Canada can do in order to avoid this sort of very arbitrary, subjective sort of policy towards the Canadian detainees abroad. First of all, I think we need to elaborate a clear, consistent foreign policy that would respect human rights and that would walk a fine balance between respecting our standards at home, our human rights standards, social justice standard at home, while respecting the internal matters of other countries. Of course, I mean, this is really difficult. Alex mentioned that, should we be more towards punishing or should we be more toward soft? I think it is the key here. It is really the key. But I think we have experts, we have people with we have diplomats with long experience, we have professors, academic, we have politicians who can sit together and do such a thing. And it has been already done, but it is a matter to adopt it and to apply it. So I think this is very important to start with. Second point, when we sell arms to some countries and help them abuse the rights of their own citizens, and then later on we ask those same country to respect the human rights, I think this is totally hypocritical, and that wouldn't help us to be considered as a respected international peace broker. I think Canada showed, unfortunately, many times this sort of double standard attitude, if to not call it hypocritical attitude, and I think it won't help us to gain to obtain and to have some credibility and to obtain concrete result when it comes to negotiate the freedom of some of our Canadian detained abroad. Abusing human rights at home also when we keep quiet about police brutality exercise on marginalized group, lack of infrastructure, school, safe water, for example, in indigenous community. These are shameful acts. And also we should have a plan to tackle those human rights abuse at home before going abroad and lecturing other countries about their human rights. This would add to our credibility. This would add to our moral values. And we have seen this a lot. China, whenever it comes to whenever Canada raises its voice, whether it is with Falun Gong, whether it is with the Uyghur, whether it is with any sort of human rights abuse in China, the first thing Chinese government are going to point to our own backyard and to the treatment of our own First Nation people. And of course, this is not a reason not to act, but I think also we have to clean our own backyard and we have to do both. Work on human rights at home and convey a very strong, consistent, coherent policy of a human right abroad. And here there is not also a better example than what Farid talked about, Bill 21 in Quebec. When it is about Bill 21 and the discrimination, clearly a piece of legislation that discriminates by banning women wearing hijab or other person wearing any religious sign to work in some profession. And then when we talk about how women are dressing in Afghanistan and how women are not able to drive for a long time in Saudi Arabia, but meanwhile we have these policies that some of our provincial governments implement, but still we do not have enough political courage to raise it and criticize it and actually challenge it in the court. The big kind of elephant in the room is, of course, remain the Palestine issue. It is an important topic that affects many Muslim communities. We spoke about the Canadian community who vote for the Liberal, that we don't want to really some sort of ruffle any feather with them, and we the government would like to keep their voters happy. We have other voters from many Muslim communities across Canada who also care about the Palestine issue and think that there is an unjust treatment to the to Palestinian civilians, in Gaza, in the occupied territories. However, these issues are barely mentioned, if not mentioned during the campaign, despite the fact that each time that there are wars and violent attack, for example, on Gaza, that we see thousands of Canadians coming out in the street to voice their disagreement, their anger with those attacks, and demand Canada to put pressure on Israel and respect the international laws. So I think those are some sort of main points or main avenues that I think Canada should build some sort of a consistent, coherent foreign policy. For years since the government of Trudeau, we heard about the creation of a feminist sort of foreign policies, but we didn't really see it put into application. And of course, to bring back this element of hypocrisy, feminist for other countries, but not feminist enough in our own country. So I think we should be careful. We should keep those guidelines of justice, whether we ask it here in Canada for our communities, and whether we can ask them abroad. We have to keep doing it clearly and not by picking and choosing our causes. I think this is where I'm going to stop, and I will be looking forward to answer some of the questions.
Thank you. So first of all,